Hey everyone, hope you're doing great. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we'll dive into what if Deku became the keeper of time. Smash that subscribe button, and be sure to peek at the description below. Let's begin. The world was loud. That was the first thing Izuku Midoriya noticed as he walked away from the shopping district. The smell of burnt ozone and sewage still clinging to the back of his throat. The world was deafeningly, oppressively loud. There was the drone of traffic, the distant wail of sirens, the chatter of pedestrians glued to their phones, and the thrum of blood rushing in his own ears. But louder than all of that was the voice echoing in his head. A deep, baritone voice that had been his lifeline, his gospel, and his hope since he was 4 years old. No. I cannot simply say you can become a hero even without power. The words felt physical, like stones sewn into the lining of his stomach. Izuku clutched the strap of his yellow backpack, his knuckles turning white. Inside, a burnt notebook, Hero Analysis for the Future, number 13, rested against his textbooks. It was a graveyard of dreams, charred by an explosion and then drowned in a koi pond. A fitting metaphor for his life, really. He kept his head down, counting the cracks in the pavement. 1, 2, 3. He shouldn't have asked. He should have just thanked All Might for saving him from the sludge villain and left it at that. He could have kept the fantasy alive for another few years, pretending that if he just worked hard enough, if he just wanted it enough, biology would yield to willpower. But reality wasn't a comic book. Reality was All Might, skeletal and weary, showing him the ugly truth beneath the golden age. Reality was the phantom ache of a quirk that had never manifested. I should probably apologize to Mom, Izuku muttered to the asphalt. She's going to worry when she sees the notebook. He turned a corner, intending to take the long way home, the path near the river where fewer people walked. He needed silence. He needed to figure out what a person did with the rest of their life when the only thing they ever wanted was declared impossible by God himself. Boom! The ground shuddered. Izuku froze. The sound was familiar. It was the concussive report of nitroglycerin igniting. Kaken? The name slipped out before he could stop it. Habits died hard, even when the person attached to the name had told him to take a swan dive off a roof only hours ago. Izuku looked up. A few blocks away, a plume of thick, black smoke was clawing its way into the sky, staining the afternoon orange with soot. Instinct, honed by a decade of hero worship, hijacked his legs. Before his brain could remind him that he was quirkless, useless, and unwanted, he was running. The Tatooine shopping district was a chaotic theater of panic. Police barriers were already up, yellow tape fluttering like frantic streamers. A crowd had gathered, a wall of gawkers pressing against the perimeter, phones raised high to capture the spectacle. Izuku squeezed through a gap between a businessman and a terrified couple, his breath hitching in his throat. It's a monster, someone whispered. Where are the heroes? Why aren't they doing anything? Izuku reached the front of the line and felt the blood drain from his face. It was the sludge villain. The same fluid, shifting nightmare that had tried to force itself down Izuku's throat under the underpass. It had escaped. All Might dropped the bottle, Izuku realized with a sick lurch of guilt. Because I grabbed his leg. Because I wasted his time. But the villain wasn't alone. Thrashing in the center of the muck, surrounded by explosions that only seemed to feed the fire around them, was a familiar head of ash-blonde hair. Kaken! Bakugo Katsuki was fighting like a trapped animal. He fired explosion after explosion, but the sludge just parted and reformed, fluid dynamics mocking brute force. The fires spread to the surrounding shops, creating a ring of heat that kept the pro-heroes at bay. I can't get close. Death Arms yelled, shielding his face from the searing heat. The villain is using the kid's quirk to create a barrier. My wood will catch fire instantly. Kamui Wood shouted, grappling away from a falling sign. I need backup. Where is All Might? Or Endeavor? Someone with a suppression quirk. The heroes were waiting. They were calculating odds, managing the perimeter, waiting for the right quirk to arrive. They were being logical. But inside the inferno, Bakugo's eyes found the crowd. Izuku saw them. Usually, those red eyes were filled with arrogance, anger, or dismissal. Now they were wide, rimmed with white, and filled with a raw primal terror. Bakugo's mouth opened, gasping for air that wasn't there, sludge forcing its way into his nose and mouth. Help me. He didn't say it. He didn't have to. The voice in Izuku's head, All Might's voice saying no, was suddenly drowned out by the roar of his own heartbeat. Don't look away. You did this. This is your fault. Logic dictated that Izuku stay put. Logic dictated that a quirkless middle schooler entering a villain hostage situation was suicide. Logic was a cold, gray thing. Izuku's legs moved. Hey! Kid! Stop! He ducked under the police tape. The heat hit him like a physical blow, singing the hair on his arms, drying his eyes instantly. He dropped his bag, his hands empty, his mind blank save for one screaming directive, save him. You again! The sludge villain roared, his liquid eyes narrowing as he recognized the green-haired boy sprinting toward him. I'll kill you this time. I'll tear you apart. A tendril of muck, thick as a tree trunk and moving with the speed of a whip, lashed out. Izuku saw it coming. In his mind, he saw the trajectory. He knew he couldn't dodge. He wasn't fast enough. He was just Deku. He was going to die here, meaningless and broken, just like everyone said. I need more time, Izuku screamed internally, his soul railing against the unfairness of the universe. I just need a second. Just 1 second. He squeezed his eyes shut and threw his hands up in a futile attempt to protect his face. And then, the world broke. It didn't happen with a sound. It happened with the absence of sound. The roar of the fire, the screaming of the crowd, the wet slosh of the villain. It was all sheared away in an instant, replaced by a silence so profound it felt heavy. Izuku flinched, waiting for the impact. Waiting for his bones to snap and his life to end. Nothing. Slowly, tremblingly, Izuku opened one eye. The world had turned gray. Not the gray of a cloudy day, but the gray of an old photograph. The color had been leached out of everything. The orange flames were now frozen sculptures of jagged slate. The black smoke was a solid, unmoving cloud of charcoal hanging in the air. The sludge tendril was inches from his face. It hung suspended in midair, a grotesque sculpture of liquid violence halted in its tracks. Droplets of slime that had been spraying off the main mass were frozen like diamonds in the gray light. What? Izuku's voice sounded strange. It didn't echo. It sounded flat, dead, as if the air itself refused to carry the vibration. He lowered his hands, his breath coming in short, panicked gasps. He looked around. Behind the police tape, the heroes were statues. Death Arms had his mouth open in a shout, but no sound came out. Kamui Woods was mid-jump, floating impossibly 3 feet off the ground. The crowd was a sea of mannequins, their expressions of horror and excitement preserved in perfect, eerie detail. Am I dead? Izuku whispered. He looked at his hands. They were still pink. He was the only thing in this monochrome nightmare that still held color. The green of his uniform, the red of his shoes, they were vibrant, violent stains on a dead world. He took a step. Pain shot through his chest. It wasn't a sharp pain, but a deep, crushing pressure, as if he were at the bottom of the ocean. He tried to inhale deeply, but the air felt thick. It resisted him. It was like breathing syrup. He had to force his diaphragm to expand, dragging the oxygen into his lungs. Move, he told himself. Whatever this is, you're not dead yet. He looked at Bakugo. The blonde was encased in the sludge, his face frozen in a rictus of agony. The explosions in his palms were stopped mid-detonation, jagged spikes of gray energy that looked like shattered glass. Izuku pushed forward. The air dragged against him. Every movement felt like wading through waist-deep water. His clothes rustled, the sound impossibly loud in the vacuum. He reached the villain. Let him go, Izuku said, but his voice died as soon as it left his lips. He grabbed the sludge covering Bakugo's mouth. It felt hard, like cold tire rubber. Without the flow of time, the liquid had lost its fluidity. It was solid matter now. Izuku dug his fingers in. He pulled. Move! His muscles screamed. The resistance was immense. Veins bulged in his neck. He grit his teeth so hard he felt enamel chip. Rip it off! With a wet, tearing sound, the only sound in the world, a chunk of the gray sludge came free in his hands. He threw it aside. It didn't fall. It just floated there, suspended where he had released it. He clawed again. And again. His fingernails tore, bleeding red onto the gray muck. He didn't care. He gouged out handfuls of the frozen villain, tunneling toward Bakugo's face. The pressure in his chest was growing. It felt like a vice tightening around his heart. His vision blurred, the edges turning dark. My heart, Izuku realized with a jolt of clinical horror. I can't feel my heartbeat. Panic flared. He pressed a hand to his chest. Nothing. No rhythm. No thump. If time is stopped, is my heart stopped too? The thought should have terrified him into immobility. Instead, it galvanized him. He was on borrowed time. Literally. He was operating on whatever oxygen was currently in his blood. He was dying with every second he spent in this gray hell. He had to hurry. He reached Bakugo's face. He grabbed the collar of Bakugo's middle school uniform. Come on! He planted his feet against the solidified sludge of the villain's main body and heaved. His back strained. His shoelaces threatened to snap. Capillaries in his eyes burst under the strain of exertion without blood flow, turning the whites of his eyes a terrifying crimson. He pulled with everything he had. Every ounce of frustration, every tear shed over a quirkless diagnosis, every moment of bullying, he channeled it all into his grip. Get him out. Bakugo moved. Slowly, agonizingly, Izuku dragged him out of the sludge. It was like pulling a tooth from a gum. The gray slime stretched, thin strands of it clinging to Bakugo's clothes, rigid as wire. Izuku didn't stop until they both tumbled backward onto the pavement. He gasped, falling to his knees. His lungs burned. His head felt like it was about to explode. He looked at Bakugo. The other boy was frozen, mid-gasp, eyes fixed on where Izuku had been a moment ago. Izuku looked up. The sludge villain was now a hollow shell, a gaping hole in its center where its hostage had been. The pressure in Izuku's chest became unbearable. A black tide rose up to swallow his consciousness. He couldn't hold it anymore. Release, his mind begged. Let go. Izuku screamed, a soundless cry of agony, and let the world go. Snap. Sound crashed back into existence with the force of a bomb blast. The roar of the fire, the screams, the sirens, it all hit Izuku at once. He collapsed forward, vomiting bile onto the asphalt, his body suddenly remembering that it needed to pump blood. Thump thump. Thump thump. Thump thump. His heart restarted with a violent, erratic rhythm that sent spikes of pain down his left arm. He gasped, sucking in air that suddenly felt thin and easy to breathe. What? The sludge villain's voice was a garbled screech of confusion. Where did he go? The tendril that had been inches from Izuku's face slapped empty pavement, cracking the concrete. The villain looked down at his chest, seeing the hole, then looked at the boys on the ground 10 feet away. How? The villain stammered. You were over there. The crowd fell silent. 1 second, the boy was running toward death. In the blink of an eye, literally faster than a blink, he was 10 feet back, and the hostage was free. It was like a jump cut in a movie. Kaken, Izuku wheezed, his vision swimming in red. Blood dripped from his nose, hot and metallic. Can you breathe? Bakugo was coughing violently, hacking up slime. He looked at Izuku, his eyes wide, shaking not with rage, but with shock. He looked at Izuku's eyes, bloodshot, terrifying, weeping tears of blood, and flinched. Deku? I'll kill you! The villain recovered his wits. He surged forward, a tidal wave of muck rising up to crush both boys. I don't know what trick you pulled, but you're dead. Izuku couldn't move. His limbs felt like lead. He had nothing left. He watched the shadow rise over them. I saved him, Izuku thought, a strange peace settling over him. I actually did it. Detroit. The voice came from nowhere and everywhere. A gust of wind pressure hit them before the figure even landed. A blur of blue and yellow dropped from the sky, landing between the boys and the villain. Smash! All Might didn't hit the villain. He hit the air in front of the villain. The shockwave was cataclysmic. An updraft of pure kinetic energy tore through the street, blasting the sludge villain apart into 1,000 harmless droplets. The fire was snuffed out instantly by the displacement of air. The clouds above swirled and broke. Silence returned, but this time, it was the silence of all. And then, it started to rain. Soft, gentle droplets fell from the disrupted atmosphere. All Might stood tall, steam rising from his body. But Izuku noticed the tremble in the hero's legs. He noticed the way All Might's hand clutched his side. I really am pathetic, All Might said, his voice low, meant only for himself, though Izuku heard it. Leaving it to a child, while I watched. Izuku tried to smile. He wanted to say, "Did you see?" I moved, but his body failed him. The adrenaline crash was absolute. His vision tunneled. The last thing he saw was the blurred face of Bakugo Katsuki, looking down at him with an expression Izuku had never seen before, and the gray clouds turning black. Then, he knew nothing. Consciousness returned in fragments. First, the smell. Antiseptic. Bleach. The sharp tang of rubbing alcohol. Then, the sound. The rhythmic beeping of a monitor. Beep, beep, beep. It was slow. Too slow. And finally, the pain. It wasn't sharp anymore, but a deep, pervasive ache in every cell of his body, as if he had run a marathon without training. Izuku? The voice was wet with tears. Izuku peeled his eyes open. The harsh fluorescent lights of a hospital room assaulted him. He groaned, squeezing them shut again. Oh, thank God. Doctor. He's awake. A warm hand grasped his. Izuku forced his eyes open again to see his mother, Midoriya Inko, hovering over his bed. Her eyes were swollen, her hair a mess. She looked like she had aged 5 years and 5 hours. Mom? His voice was a croak. His throat felt like sandpaper. Don't try to speak, baby. Here. She held a cup of water with a straw to his lips. He drank greedily. The water was cold and soothing. When he finished, he let his head fall back against the pillow. What happened? You were in shock, Inko sobbed, stroking his hair. Severe exhaustion. Subconjunctival hemorrhage in both eyes. Muscle tears. Izuku, your heart. They said your heart rate dropped so low in the ambulance they thought they lost you. Izuku looked at his arms. They were bandaged. He could feel the tightness of compression sleeves on his legs under the sheets. The door opened, and a doctor walked in. He wasn't the usual family pediatrician. This man was older, with sharp glasses and a clipboard that looked heavy. He wore a badge that read Quirk Specialist. Midoriya-kun, the doctor said, his tone professional but laced with curiosity. I am Dr. Ijiko. It is good to see you awake, Dr. Inko said, wiping her eyes. Is he okay? The police said that he used the quirk? But Izuku is quirkless. We have the x-rays from when he was 4. The extra toe joint. Dr. Ijiko pulled a chair up to the bedside. He looked at the clipboard, then at Izuku. Medicine is a science, Mrs. Midoriya, Ijiko began, adjusting his glasses. But quirks are often chaos theory wrapped in biology. Yes, the double-jointed toe is the standard indicator for quirklessness. It represents a lack of the next stage of evolution. He tapped the clipboard. However, there is a rare percentage of the population known as late bloomers. Usually, these manifest in puberty. Even rarer are those whose quirks are dormant, requiring a specific, high-stress catalyst to awaken. A trauma trigger. Izuku felt a chill. Trauma? The fight with the villain, Ijiko said. Witness accounts say you vanished and reappeared. The villain claimed the same. We analyzed the security footage from the nearest ATM. The doctor turned the clipboard around to show them a tablet screen. Watch. The video played. It showed the chaos of the fire. It showed Izuku running under the tape. He was moving in real time. Then, suddenly, the frame glitched. One frame, Izuku was 5 meters from the villain, hands up to protect his face. The very next frame, Izuku was 10 meters back, collapsed on the ground with the hostage. There are 30 frames per second in this camera, Ijiko said softly. In the space of 1/30th of a second, you moved 15 meters, extracted a boy from a semi-solid confinement, and retreated. To the naked eye, it looked like teleportation. Teleportation? Inko gasped. Like warping? No, Izuku whispered. The memory of the gray world washed over him. The silence. The resistance of the air. It wasn't teleportation. I walked. Ijiko raised an eyebrow. You walked? Everything stopped. Izuku said, staring at his hands. The sound. The fire. The villain. Everything turned gray and stopped moving. But I could move. It was heavy. The air was heavy. Ichiko's eyes narrowed behind his lenses. He scribbled something furiously on his chart. Chronokinesis, the doctor muttered. Subjective temporal stasis. Time stop? Inko asked, her voice trembling. It appears so, Ichiko said. He looked at Izuku with a gravity that made the boy uncomfortable. Midoriya-kun, do you know why you are in so much pain? Izuku shook his head. Because physics is a cruel mistress, Ichiko said. When you stop time, or slow it to a near halt relative to yourself, you are essentially defying the natural laws of the universe. You are moving, but the air molecules around you are not. Friction becomes infinite. Air resistance becomes like moving through quicksand. He pointed to the heart monitor. But more importantly, your biology. If time stops for the world, it must stop for your body's automatic functions, or you would age rapidly relative to the world. But if your heart stops, you cannot move. Your quirk seems to put you in a state of biological suspension, while allowing your consciousness and voluntary muscles to override the stasis. Essentially, every time you use this power, I'm dying, Izuku finished. Inko let out a small scream, covering her mouth. You are suffocating your own cells, Ichiko corrected. Your heart doesn't beat. Your blood doesn't flow. You are operating on oxygen reserves. The blood vessels in your eyes burst because of the pressure differential when time resumed. Midoriya-kun, this power, it is catastrophic to the user. The doctor stood up. You are not quirkless. In fact, you possess a mutation class ability of the highest order. Reality manipulation. But I must warn you, if you use this for more than a few seconds at a time, you will go into cardiac arrest, and you will not wake up. The room fell silent. Izuku looked at his hands. He had a quirk. He had a quirk. He wasn't useless. He wasn't Deku the defenseless. He was. I'm a hero, he whispered. You're a patient, Ichiko said sternly. I'm keeping you for observation for 48 hours. Your body has undergone severe stress. Rest. The doctor left. Inko hugged Izuku, weeping tears of relief and terror. Izuku held her, but his eyes were fixed on the clock on the wall. Tick. 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 The second hand moved with a relentless, mocking rhythm. He had stopped it once. He had held back the tide of inevitability. I can be a hero, he thought, a fierce fire igniting in his chest, hotter than the sludge villain's flames. But the cost. That night, Izuku couldn't sleep. The hospital was quiet, but the hum of electricity and the distant chatter of nurses kept him on edge. Every shadow looked like the sludge villain. Every blink felt like a potential time skip. He lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, flexing his hand. Stop, he thought, focusing on the dust motes dancing in a shaft of moonlight. Nothing happened. The dust kept dancing. Maybe it only works when I'm scared. Or maybe I need to push harder? He was afraid to try too hard. He remembered the feeling of his heart stopping. It was a cold, void-like sensation he never wanted to feel again. Knock, knock, Izuku jolted. Come in? The door slid open. A skeletal figure in an oversized yellow suit shuffled in. He looked like a stiff breeze would knock him over, but his blue eyes burned with an intensity that Izuku recognized instantly. All Might? Izuku sat up, wincing as his muscles protested. Young Midoriya, the hero said. He closed the door behind him and coughed, a wet, hacking sound. I came to see how you were doing. And to apologize. Apologize? Izuku waved his hands frantically. No! You saved us! You changed the weather with a single punch! It was amazing! All Might dragged the chair closer and sat down heavily. I saved you only after you saved young Bakugo. If you hadn't acted, if you hadn't bought those few seconds, the sludge would have suffocated him before I could summon the strength to transform. The hero looked down at his hands. I told you that you couldn't be a hero. I broke your dreams on that rooftop. And yet, when the pros stood by and watched, when I stood by and watched, you moved. Izuku felt tears pricking his eyes. My legs just moved on their own. I couldn't watch him die. That, All Might said, pointing a bony finger at him, is the essence of a true hero. Stories of the greatest heroes all have that in common. Their bodies moved before they could think. Izuku began to sob. It was the validation he had waited a lifetime for. However, All Might's tone shifted. It became serious. Dangerous. We need to talk about your quirk, young Midoriya. Izuku wiped his eyes. The doctor said it's time manipulation. Chronokinesis. All Might nodded slowly. I felt it. When I arrived at the scene, I was preparing to jump. But suddenly, the world skipped. One moment the villain was gloating, the next you were on the ground. It was a discontinuity in reality. All Might leaned forward, his sunken eyes locking onto Izuku's. Young Midoriya, listen to me closely. The power to manipulate time is not just a quirk. It is a fundamental alteration of the laws of nature. There are forces in this world, dark, ancient forces, that have sought such power for generations. Izuku swallowed hard. Forces? I cannot tell you everything yet, All Might said. But you must know this, you have painted a target on your back. A quirk that can stop the clock, that can potentially rewrite mistakes. It is the ultimate prize for a man who wishes to rule forever. Izuku realized All Might wasn't talking about petty villains. He was talking about something else. A boogeyman. Why are you telling me this? Izuku asked. Because I want to protect you, All Might said. And because I was wrong. You can be a hero. But with a power like that, you cannot just be a hero. You have to be a guardian. A keeper. All Might stood up. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a card. It wasn't a business card. It was a direct number. I am a teacher at UA High starting this year, All Might said. If you aim for UA, I can watch over you. I can help you train, not just to build your body, but to understand the responsibility you now hold. You want to train me? Your body is frail, All Might said bluntly. You stopped time for perhaps 2 seconds, and it nearly killed you. If you want to save people without dying, you need a vessel capable of withstanding the strain of eternity. He smiled, and for a moment, the shadow of the symbol of peace overlaid the skeletal man. What do you say, young Midoriya? Do you wish to seize your destiny? Izuku looked at the card. Then he looked at his reflection in the dark window. He saw the red eyes. He saw the bandages. He saw the boy who had wanted to be like All Might, but who was now something different, something terrifying and new. He clenched his fist. Yes, Izuku said. I'll do it. All Might nodded. Good. Rest now. Our work begins when you are discharged. The entrance exam is in 10 months. We have a lot of time to make up for. All Might turned to leave. At the door, he paused. Oh, and young Midoriya? Yes? Don't use that power again until we figure out how to keep your heart beating. The world needs you alive. The door clicked shut. Izuku sat alone in the darkness. He looked at the clock on the wall again. Tick. 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 The second hand marched on, indifferent to human suffering. But Izuku looked at it with new eyes. It wasn't a master anymore. It was an opponent. He lay back, closing his eyes. The great world waited behind his eyelids, silent and heavy. He knew it was there now. The space between the seconds, and next time, he would be ready to walk through it. The smell of Dagoba Municipal Beach Park was a complex bouquet of rotting kelp, wet cardboard, and the distinct, metallic tang of oxidation. It was the smell of things that had been forgotten, things left to the mercy of the elements to slowly, agonizingly fall apart. For Izuku Midoriya, it was the smell of a classroom. Concentrate, young Midoriya. All Might's voice boomed over the sound of crashing waves, though the hero himself sat on a relatively clean refrigerator, looking more like a skeleton in a tracksuit than the symbol of peace. You are not trying to break the microwave. You are trying to convince the microwave that it is the year 3000. Izuku stood knee-deep in a pile of trash, his hands pressed against the rusted casing of a discarded appliance. Sweat dripped from his nose, stinging the raw skin where he'd wiped it too many times. I'm trying. Izuku gritted his teeth, squeezing his eyes shut. He reached inside himself, searching for that strange, cold knot in his chest that had appeared 10 months ago. It sat right next to his heart, a heavy, dense gravity well. Dr. Ejiko had called it a Chronos gland, a mutation in the cardiac tissue that generated a temporal field. Izuku just called it the stop. But today, he wasn't trying to stop. Stopping was dangerous. Stopping meant his heart didn't beat. Today, he was trying to push. Visualize the flow, All Might coached, his voice dropping to a serious register. Time is a river. Usually, you are a rock in the stream, letting it flow past you. When you stop time, you build a dam. But now, you must become the rapids. You must grab the current and force it through the object. Izuku visualized the river. He imagined the seconds ticking by, not one by one, but in a torrent. He imagined the metal under his hands aging. He thought of seasons changing, of rain falling, of the sun bleaching the paint, of the molecular bonds weakening under the weight of eras. Age, he commanded the microwave. Wither. A wave of nausea hit him, a sensation like stepping off a spinning merry-go-round. The heat in his hands spiked. Crack. A sound like a gunshot rang out. Izuku jumped back, gasping for air. The microwave didn't explode. It simply collapsed. The metal casing, which had been solid a moment ago, turned a deep, flaky orange. The door hinges disintegrated into powder, the glass front clouded over and shattered into dust. In less than 3 seconds, the appliance had turned into a pile of ferrous dirt. Izuku fell to his knees, clutching his stomach. I did it. All Might hopped down from his perch, landing with a thud that sent trash skittering. He examined the pile of dust with a look that was equal parts pride and horror. Incredible, the hero whispered. You accelerated the oxidation process by, what? 500 years? In a matter of seconds. It felt hot, Izuku wheezed, looking at his palms. They were red, radiating heat. When I stop time, everything gets cold. When I speed it up, the energy has to go somewhere. Entropy creates heat. Entropy, All Might repeated the word, testing its weight. A fitting name for that aspect of your power. But look at you. All Might produced a mirror from his pocket, one of the many random items he carried these days. He held it up to Izuku. Izuku looked. The bags under his eyes were dark, bruising the skin. But more concerning was the hair. Just above his right ear, a small patch of his unruly green curls had turned a stark, bone white. Cellular exhaustion, All Might said grimly. Dr. Ijiko warned us. Even though you are projecting the time acceleration outward, your body acts as the conduit. Some of that time leaks into you. You aged that microwave 5 centuries, and your body paid a tax of, perhaps a week? A month? Izuku touched the white patch of hair. It felt brittle. It's worth it, Izuku said, his voice firm despite the trembling of his hands. If I can control this, I can clear the beach. I can destroy weapons. I can end fights without throwing a punch. But at what cost? All Might sighed, looking out at the ocean. You have 2 abilities, young Midoriya. Stasis, which stops your heart. And entropy, which steals your youth. Most heroes sacrifice their bodies for the job, but you are sacrificing your very existence. I don't care, Izuku said, standing up. He grabbed a rusted pipe and threw it onto a pile. I'm going to Yue. I'm going to be a hero. Even if I have to burn out to do it. All Might looked at the boy, seeing the fire in his eyes. It was the same fire that had made him move against the sludge villain. It was a beautiful, terrifying thing. All right, All Might said, clapping his large hands together. Then let's get back to it. The beach won't clear itself, and the entrance exam is in 2 weeks. But Izuku? Yes? Try not to turn into an old man before high school starts. The uniforms won't fit. The 10 months passed in a blur of agony and dust. School became a fugue state for Izuku. He studied furiously, his notebooks filling up not just with hero analysis, but with quantum physics, thermodynamics, and relativity theory. He had to understand what he was doing. He had to know the math behind the miracle. His relationship with Bakugo Katsuki had shifted. Since the sludge incident, Bakugo hadn't bullied him. He hadn't told him to dive off a roof. In fact, he barely spoke to him at all. He watched Izuku with a hawk-like intensity, his red eyes narrowing whenever Izuku rubbed his chest or checked his pulse. A nervous tic Izuku had developed. 3 days before the exam, the silence broke. Izuku was packing his bag at the end of the day when a hand slammed onto his desk. A small explosion popped against the wood, smelling of burnt sugar. Deku. Izuku didn't flinch. He finished zipping his bag and looked up. Kaken. Bakugo loomed over him, but there was no heat in his posture. Just a cold, vibrating tension. You're applying to Yue, Bakugo stated. It wasn't a question. Yes. And you're gonna use that thing you did. It's my quirk, Kaken. It finally woke up. Bakugo's jaw tightened. He leaned in close. I looked it up. Spontaneous manifestation in late puberty is statistically 0. Unless you were hiding it. Were you hiding it? Watching me run around like an idiot while you sat on a nuke? I wasn't hiding it, Izuku said quietly. I didn't know. I thought I was useless until I wasn't. Bakugo stared at him for a long, uncomfortable moment. He looked at the white streak in Izuku's hair, which Izuku tried to comb over but failed to hide. You look like shit, Bakugo muttered. I've been training. Don't die, Bakugo said, turning away abruptly and marching toward the door. If you die in the exam, it's gonna look bad on my record that I went to school with a weakling who couldn't handle his own power. I won't die, Izuku called out. Bakugo paused at the door, not looking back. You better not. I'm not gonna be the one to clean up your mess again. He slammed the door. Izuku let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. It was the closest thing to a pep talk he was ever going to get from Bakugo Katsuki. The day of the exam. Yue High School was massive. The glass towers reflected the blue sky, looking like a cathedral to the concept of heroism. Thousands of students swarmed the gates, a kaleidoscope of mutations and uniforms. Izuku stood at the gate, vibrating with anxiety. He wore his middle school uniform, which felt tighter around the shoulders than it had 10 months ago. The beach training had built muscle, layering dense, functional strength over his once scrawny frame. He took a step forward, tripped on his own shoelace, and prepared to eat pavement. Reflex. The world turned gray. Silence slammed into place. Gravity paused. Izuku hovered at a 45-degree angle, his face inches from the concrete. In the monochrome world, he sighed. Clumsy. He placed his hands on the ground, pushed himself upright, and adjusted his footing. He felt the familiar tightness in his chest, the pressure building. 1 second. 2 seconds. Release. Snap. Time resumed. Izuku was suddenly standing upright, dusting off his pants. Whoa! A girl with a round face and brown hair blinked, her hand outstretched as if she had been about to catch him. She looked at her hand, then at him, confused. I thought you were gonna fall. She chirped, tilting her head. Did you catch yourself? You moved really fast. Oh, yeah, Izuku stammered, rubbing the back of his neck. Just good reflexes. Thanks for worrying. I'm Uraraka Ochako, she beamed. Good luck. Let's do our best. She skipped away. Izuku clutched his chest. Heart rate, 110. Stable. Using stasis for a fraction of a second, a micro-stutter, was becoming second nature. It barely hurt anymore. It was just a skip in the record of his life. The written exam was a breeze. Izuku had spent his life analyzing heroes. Academic questions were just another form of analysis. The practical exam, however, was the nightmare. Izuku stood in the crowd outside Battle Center B. He wore a simple green tracksuit he had bought cheap. Around his wrists were heavy-duty watches, analog, not digital. Digital watches glitched when he used his quirk. Mechanical gears were trustworthy. Present Mick's voice had been loud, but the reality of the situation was louder. Robots, Izuku thought, eyeing the massive gates. The enemy is robots. This is good. Entropy works best on inorganic matter. Living things have a biofield that resists the aging process, but metal? Metal has no soul. Metal obeys time. Start. Present Mick's scream from the observation tower pierced the air. There's no countdown in a real battle. Go! 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 The crowd hesitated for a split second. Izuku didn't. Micro-stutter. The world went gray. The other examinees froze in mid-step. Izuku sprinted. The air was thick, like running through gelatin, resisting his movements. He pushed through the heavy atmosphere, crossing the threshold of the gate. Release. He burst into the city replica ahead of the pack, gasping as the air thinned out and oxygen flooded his lungs. First blood! He yelled to himself, turning a corner. A one-pointer, a machine resembling a uni-wheel tank, rolled out from an alley, its red eye locking onto him. Target acquired, it droned. Izuku didn't have super strength. He couldn't punch through steel. He had to get close. He ran straight at it. The robot raised a mechanical arm to swat him. Stasis. The arm froze mid-swing. Izuku ducked under it, the metal looming motionless above him. He slapped his palms against the robot's central chassis. Entropy. Maximum output. He visualized the rust. He visualized the wiring insulation cracking, the battery acid leaking, the gears grinding down to smooth useless nubs. Age. Heat flared in his palms. Release. Crunch. Time resumed. The robot didn't just stop, it shrieked. Smoke poured from its joints as the metal turned a sickly brown instantly. The wheel axle snapped, rusted through, and the machine collapsed into a heap of corroded scrap. 1 point, Izuku panted, wiping sweat from his brow. He checked his pulse. Fast but steady. He looked at his hands. They were trembling. This is inefficient, he muttered. I have to touch them. I have to focus. It takes too long. Behind him, explosions rang out. Bakugo flew past, blasting 3 robots to pieces in a second. A boy with engines in his legs zoomed by, kicking heads off machines. A guy with a laser belt sliced through 2 at once. They were fast. They were destructive. They were tailored for this. Izuku was a scalpel in a contest for sledgehammers. He ran. He found a 2-pointer. He jumped on its back, riding it like a rodeo bull while pouring entropy into its neck joint until the head fell off. 3 points. 10 minutes passed. Izuku was exhausted. His hands were blistered from the heat of his own quirk. His score was abysmal. 22 points. It wasn't enough. He knew the cutoff was usually higher. He saw others racking up 40, 50 points. He was too slow. Every robot required him to get in close, touch it, and hold contact for seconds. In a war zone, seconds were a luxury he didn't have. I need more, Izuku panic whispered, turning down a main street. Where are they? I need a swarm. I can rust the whole group if they're touching. The ground began to shake. It started as a vibration in the soles of his shoes, then escalated to a localized earthquake. Dust fell from the windows of the fake buildings. What the? From the end of the main thoroughfare, a shadow rose. It blotted out the sun, the 0-pointer. It was colossal. A monstrosity of green metal and lights, easily the size of a skyscraper. Its tread crushed a building as if it were made of cardboard. The wind displacement from its movement knocked students off their feet. Run! Someone screamed. It's huge, not worth any points. Just go. The crowd of examinees broke. It was a stampede of retreat. Izuku turned to run with them. Logic dictated retreat. Survival dictated retreat. Ow! The cry was faint, buried under the rumble of the machine. Izuku stopped. He looked back. Trapped under a pile of rubble, right in the path of the Titan, was the round-faced girl. Uraraka. Her leg was pinned under a slab of concrete. She was struggling, her face pale, looking up at the descending tread of the 0-pointer. The robot was mindless. It was programmed to crush. It didn't know she was there. She's going to die. The thought was clinical. Cold. The voice in Izuku's head, the one that sounded like All Might, spoke up. Save her. But another voice, the voice of Dr. Ujiko, whispered, don't use entropy on anything bigger than a fridge. The feedback will age you. It might kill you. Izuku looked at the girl. He looked at the robot. He didn't think. He didn't weigh the pros and cons. Micro stutter. He vanished from his spot. In the gray world, Izuku sprinted toward the Titan. The air resistance was agonizing. It felt like running through deep water. His lungs burned for oxygen he couldn't access. He reached the girl. He couldn't move the rubble. It was too heavy, and without super strength, moving it in stasis was impossible. He looked up at the robot. The tread was suspended 10 feet above them, a hanging guillotine. I can't move her. I have to stop it. He couldn't rust the whole thing. It was too big. It was thousands of tons of refined steel. Trying to rust the whole thing would turn Izuku into a withered husk instantly. A joint. I need a weak point. He looked at the mechanism driving the tread. The axle. It was thick as a redwood tree, but it was the pivot point for the entire forward motion. Izuku grabbed the rubble and climbed. In the silent, gray world, he scrambled up the debris, jumping onto the frozen tread of the robot. He climbed the metal links, his fingers bleeding as he clawed his way up. He reached the main axle. He placed both hands on the cold steel. Release. Snap. Time resumed. The noise was deafening. The tread descended. No! Izuku screamed, not to the robot, but to the universe. He poured everything he had into the metal. He didn't visualize a river. He visualized an ocean. He visualized the heat death of the universe. He drew upon every second of his own life force and shoved it into the machine. Rot. Decay. Turned to dust. White light exploded from his hands. The heat was instantaneous and searing. His sleeves caught fire. The massive steel axle groaned. It turned orange. Then red. Then black. Deep pockmarks appeared on the surface. Flakes of rust the size of dinner plates rained down. The metal structure began to groan, a screeching wail of structural failure. Die! Izuku roared, a word borrowed from his childhood friend. Crack! The axle snapped. The sound was like a bomb going off. The entire tread assembly on the right side collapsed. The zero-pointer lurched, losing its balance. The massive forward momentum turned into a catastrophic tumble. The giant robot twisted, its rusted leg crumbling into a mountain of orange dust, and it fell backward, away from Uraraka. The impact shook the entire city block. Izuku was thrown from the machine by the force of the collapse. He fell through the air, smoke trailing from his arms. He hit the ground hard, rolling to a stop near Uraraka. He lay there, staring at the sky. The clouds were moving. That was good. Time was moving. He tried to lift his arm. It felt heavy. He looked at it. His skin was grayish, wrinkled. His hand looked like the hand of an 80-year-old man. Trembling, he reached up to touch his face. His skin felt papery. Izuku! Uraraka had freed herself, or someone had helped her, he wasn't sure. Her face hovered over his. She looked terrified. Your hair! She gasped. Izuku couldn't see it, but he knew. The white patch had spread. It probably covered half his head now. Did I get it? He wheezed. His voice sounded raspy, old. You destroyed it, she cried. You took out the zero-pointer. Good, Izuku whispered. That's logical. The black tide rose up to claim him. His heart gave a pathetic, fluttering thump, and then stopped. The teacher's lounge. The room was dark, lit only by the glow of multiple screens covering the wall. The faculty of UA sat in silence, watching the footage from Battle Center B. Well, Midnight said, breaking the silence. She swirled a glass of juice, looking unsettled. That was horrifying. On the screen, the zero-pointer lay in ruins. It didn't look like it had been destroyed in a battle. It looked like it had been sitting in a jungle for 1,000 years. It was a heap of scrap metal, red with corrosion. Chronokinesis, Nisa said, his paws resting on the console. Mutation type. High-level reality warping. The ability to accelerate entropy in inorganic matter. It's dangerous, Vlad King grunted. Did you see the boy? He looked like a corpse when they carted him off. Recovery girl is furious. She says his cellular age advanced by 3 years in a single instant. Aizawa Shoda, wrapped in his sleeping bag in the corner, stared at the screen with bloodshot eyes. He watched the way Izuku moved, or rather, the way he didn't move. The glitches in the footage. He's a liability, Aizawa said flatly. He saved the girl. All Might's voice came from the back of the room. The hero was in his skinny form, leaning against the doorframe, clutching his side. He had 0 points. He knew retreating was the logical option. He sacrificed his own lifespan to save a competitor. Self-sacrifice is noble, Aizawa countered, but self-destruction is illogical. If he uses that power once in a real fight, he's out of commission. He's a glass cannon that shatters every time it fires. He held back, Nisa piped up, his eyes gleaming. The teachers looked at the principal. Look at the robots he destroyed earlier, Niza pointed out, highlighting a screen. He touched them and they fell apart. But he controlled the decay. He only rusted the joints. He only destroyed what was necessary. With the zero-pointer, he panicked. He dumped too much time into it. Niza turned his chair around. He has control issues, yes. But the potential? A hero who can neutralize a bomb by fast-forwarding its timer? A hero who can collapse a villain's weapon into dust with a touch? Or preserve a collapsing building by stopping its time? He didn't stop the building, Aizawa noted. He destroyed the robot. He has 2 modes, All Might said softly. He is still learning, Aizawa scowled. He pulled a jelly pouch from his pocket and sucked on it aggressively. I don't like it. A child playing with time is a disaster waiting to happen. The physical recoil alone makes him a problem child. Then fail him, Midnight challenged. He has 22 villain points. That's not enough to pass. Aizawa looked at the screen again. He watched the boy, gray and withered, falling from the sky. He watched the sheer, unadulterated will it took to do that. I am the homeroom teacher for 1A this year, Aizawa muttered. If he's in my class, I can expel him myself if he proves to be suicidal. Niza chuckled. He tapped a button on the console. Rescue points are a hidden metric for a reason, the principal said. Risking one's life, and in his case, his literal time on this earth, to save another is the essence of heroism. I give him 60 rescue points. 60? President Mike yelled. That puts him in the top 5. Then it's settled, Niza said, stamping a document. Midoriya Izuka passes. God help us all. 1 week later, Izuka sat in his room. He looked different. Recovery Girl had done her best, but she couldn't reverse time. She could only heal the damage. The exhaustion was gone, and his skin was youthful again, but the hair remained. A thick streak of stark white hair ran through his messy green curls, starting from his right temple and sweeping back. It made him look distinguished, or perhaps just scarred. He looked like a boy who had seen too much. His hands were wrapped in compression bandages. His heart rate monitor, a permanent accessory now, beeped steadily on his wrist. Beep, beep, beep. On his desk lay an envelope. The wax seal of UA was broken. A holographic projector lay dormant next to it. All Might's message had been recorded. The words still echoed in Izuka's mind. You passed. But more than that, you showed us the future. Welcome to your Hero Academia. Izuka picked up a pen. He opened a fresh notebook. Hero Analysis for the Future, number 14. On the first page, he didn't draw a hero. He drew a clock. He sketched the mechanism of the zero-pointer's axle. He wrote down the estimated mass, the estimated decay rate, and the sensation of the heat. Analysis. Output, catastrophic. Cost, 3 years of cellular aging, recovered via quirk therapy, partially permanent. Lesson. Do not use entropy on massive objects unless death is the alternative. New goal, precision. I don't need to rust the whole robot. I just need to rust the screw holding it together. He touched the white streak in his hair. I got in, he whispered to the empty room. He looked at the All Might poster on his wall. The smile seemed different now. It didn't look like a promise of safety. It looked like a challenge. I have to be faster, Izuka thought. I have to be smarter. I don't have super strength. I don't have explosions. I have time. And time is the one thing that runs out for everyone. He closed the notebook. Tomorrow, Yui started. Tomorrow, he would meet Aizawa. Tomorrow, he would face Bakugo. Izuka reached out and touched the second hand of his alarm clock. Stop. The room went gray. The silence descended. In the quiet, Izuka smiled. It was a small, sharp smile. He was the keeper now. And he wasn't going to waste a single second. The uniform of UA High School felt heavy. It wasn't the fabric, high-quality slate-gray polyester, but the weight of the legacy stitched into the embroidery. Izuka Midoriya adjusted his red tie for the 10th time in the reflection of the classroom door. Class 1A. The summit of Hero Society's youth. He looked different than he had in middle school. The white streak in his hair, a permanent scar from the entrance exam, was stark against the forest green curls. He had tried to dye it back, but the pigment wouldn't take. It was as if that hair existed in a different timeline, one where color didn't exist. On his left wrist, a bulky, customized monitor hummed. It was a gift from Melissa Shield, an acquaintance of All Might's who had overnight the prototype from Ireland upon hearing about the timekeeper. It displayed two numbers, his heart rate, and a countdown timer that reset every time his pulse vanished. Beep, beep, beep. Normal sinus rhythm, Izuku whispered to himself. Don't panic. Panic raises the heart rate. A raised heart rate makes stasis harder to engage. He took a deep breath, pushed the door open, and stepped into his future. The chaos hit him instantly. Remove your feet from that desk. Ha! You want to make me four eyes? It is disrespectful to the upperclassmen who sat there before you, Tenya Ida and Katsuki Bakugo. Some things, it seemed, were fixed points in time. Izuku kept his head down, walking toward a desk in the back. He didn't want to be noticed. He wanted to analyze, to observe, to understand the baseline of his peers. It's you! The cheerful voice shattered his stealth. Uraraka Ochako appeared in front of him, beaming. The plain-looking boy. You got in. I was so worried about your hair. Is it a fashion statement now? Izuku flinched, self-consciously touching the white lock. Ah, no. It's complicated. Cellular burnout. Oh, Uraraka blinked, her smile faltering slightly. That sounds intense. If you're here to socialize, get out. The voice came from the floor. A yellow sleeping bag lay like a chrysalis in the doorway. Aizawa Shota unzipped himself, rising like a vampire from a coffin. His eyes were bloodshot, dry, and calculating. He scanned the room, his gaze lingering for a fraction of a second on Izuku's wrist monitor. It took you 8 seconds to quiet down, Aizawa rasped, holding up a juice pouch. Time is a limited resource. You lot aren't rational enough to understand that yet. Izuku felt a chill. Time is a limited resource. The words resonated with him more than anyone else in the room. I'm your homeroom teacher, Aizawa Shota, the man said, tossing a gym uniform at the front row. Put these on. We're heading to the grounds. The quirk apprehension test. The sun was bright, casting sharp shadows across the dirt field. The air smelled of summer dust and nervousness. A quirk apprehension test? Uraraka asked. But what about orientation? The ceremony? If you want to be a hero, you don't have time for frilly ceremonies, Aizawa said, his back turned to them. Yui is known for its freestyle education. That applies to the teachers as well. He turned, his dark hair falling over his eyes. Bakugo. You finished first in the entrance exam. What was your softball throw in middle school? 67 meters, Bakugo grunted, stepping into the circle. Try it with your quirk. Bakugo smirked. He stretched his arms, the explosions popping in his palms like firecrackers. He wound up, his form perfect. Dai-ai! Boom! The ball rocketed into the sky, trailing smoke. Aizawa held up a device. 705.2 meters. The class erupted. Awesome! We can use our quirks as much as we want? This looks fun. Aizawa's expression darkened. Fun? You have 3 years to become a hero. You think it's going to be fun? He smiled, a jagged, terrifying expression. Right. New rule. The student who ranks last in total score will be judged to have no potential, and will be punished with immediate expulsion. The air left the clearing. Panic set in. Izuku clenched his fists. He wasn't strong. He wasn't fast. His quirk didn't give him physical enhancements. It gave him opportunities, but his body was still that of a fit, but unenhanced teenager. I have to manage my sync rate, Izuku thought, tapping his monitor. I can't use full stasis for every test. I'll die. I have to use micro-stutters. Test 1, 50-meter dash. Ida Tenya stepped up to the line against Seiyu Azui. Ida's engines roared. On your mark. Get set. Go, Ida blurred. 3.04 seconds. Izuku stepped up next. His opponent was Ojiro. I can't make myself faster, Izuku analyzed. But I can remove the variables. Go, Izuku ran. He wasn't fast. But every time his foot hit the ground, he engaged a micro-stutter. Blink. Time froze for 0.1 seconds. In that frozen fraction, Izuku adjusted his posture. He corrected the angle of his ankle. He ensured his push-off was mathematically perfect. Blink. Time resumed. To the onlookers, Izuku looked like he was glitching. His running form was unnatural, too rigid, too perfect. He didn't have the wasted motion of a human. He moved like a stop-motion animation with a high frame rate. 5.51 seconds, the robot announced. It wasn't superhuman, but it was peak athletic performance. Izuku panted, clutching his chest. His heart monitor gave a stuttered beep beep wub beep. Aizawa watched him, unimpressed. You're wasting stamina on calculations, Midoriya. Test 2, grip strength. Izuku squeezed the machine. 56 kilograms. Average. He couldn't age the machine to make it softer without destroying it, which wouldn't count. He took the average score. Test 3, standing long jump, stutter. Izuku jumped. At the apex of his arc, he froze time. Gravity halted. He was suspended in the air. He pulled his legs up, tucking them tighter than human reflex allowed, and leaned forward to shift his center of mass. Resume. He landed further than his muscles should have carried him. Cleared the sandbox. Test 5, the ball throw. This was it. The make or break moment. Uraraka got infinity. Izuku swallowed hard. He stepped into the circle. If I use entropy on the ball, it turns to dust. If I use stasis, it doesn't go anywhere. I need force. He looked at his arm. He could accelerate the time of his own muscle fibers, causing them to contract at supersonic speeds. It would tear the muscle and age the arm by a month, but it would launch the ball. No. Too much damage. Think. Momentum. Izuku wound up. He prepared to throw. Stop. The world turned gray. The silence of the void descended. The birds in the sky hung frozen. Izuku stood in the circle. He didn't throw the ball. Instead, he walked out of the circle. He walked 10 meters away, grabbed a handful of dust, and walked back. He adjusted his grip. He corrected his stance. My heart isn't beating. The pressure in his chest built. The gray world started to vibrate, a sign he was reaching his limit. I can't generate power. I can only apply precision. He wound up again. He prepared to release the ball at the exact optimal angle of 45 degrees. Suddenly, the gray world shattered. Snap. My eyes. Izuku gasped. The color returned instantly, blinding him. His quirk had cut out. The ball dropped from his hand, rolling a pathetic 3 meters. What? He looked at Aizawa. The teacher's hair was floating. His eyes glowed red. I erased your quirk, Aizawa said, his voice flat. That monitor on your wrist. It flatlined for 3 seconds. You were planning to stop time to adjust your aim, weren't you? And in doing so, you stop your own biological functions. Aizawa stepped closer, his scarf floating like a serpent. It's irrational. You have a powerful quirk, but every time you use it, you flirt with cardiac arrest. You can't save anyone if you're dead, Midoriya. Aizawa deactivated his quirk. His hair fell. Ichiko's report says you age when you accelerate time, and you die when you stop it. You're a liability. A hero who sacrifices his life for a single task is not a hero. He's a martyr. We have enough statues. We need soldiers. I can do it, Izuku whispered. Then show me, Aizawa said, stepping back. But if that monitor flatlines for more than 5 seconds, I'm expelling you for your own safety. 1 attempt. Izuku picked up the ball. 5 seconds. That was the hard limit. Think. Don't just stop. Don't just flow. Sink. He remembered the beach. The feeling of the current. Izuku didn't wind up for a normal throw. He held the ball close to his chest. Chronos. Localized acceleration. He didn't target the ball. He targeted the air in a narrow tunnel directly in front of him. Decay, he hissed. He accelerated the air molecules in a straight line. The air aged, losing its thermal energy, cooling rapidly, creating a sudden, violent pressure drop. A vacuum tunnel formed for a split second. Izuku threw the ball into the vacuum, with zero air resistance, and the sudden pressure differential sucking the object forward. The ball didn't just fly, it vanished. Boom! The sound barrier cracked as the ball exited the vacuum tunnel and hit the normal atmosphere hundreds of meters away. Izuku fell to one knee, clutching his arm. His skin was fine, but he felt a deep, aching exhaustion. Aizawa looked at the device. 700.3 meters. He looked at Izuku. The boy was panting, his heart monitor beeping wildly, but alive. He hadn't stopped his heart. He had manipulated the environment. He created a vacuum cannon, Jayoro's Momo whispered, her hand over her mouth. By accelerating the entropy of the air, that requires genius-level calculation. Izuku looked up at Aizawa, tears of exertion pricking his eyes. I'm still here. Aizawa's mouth quirked up in a grin that didn't reach his eyes. So you are. The battle trial. I am here. All Might burst through the door in his Silver Age costume. Coming through the door like a normal person, the class cheered, the tension of the morning dissipating. Izuku sat in his new costume. It was a green jumpsuit, reinforced with carbon fiber to support his joints during rapid acceleration/deceleration. On his belt were several pouches of high-calorie glucose gels. His mask had long ears that housed sensors to detect air pressure changes, and his gloves were fitted with vents to release the heat generated by entropy. But the centerpiece was the chest plate. A glowing green display mirrored his wrist monitor. 80 BPM. Hero Team A, Midoriya and Uraraka. All Might announced, pulling balls from a box. Villain Team D, Bakugo and Ida. Izuku froze. Fate, it seemed, was not done with him. He looked across the room. Bakugo was staring at him. The blonde wasn't yelling. He was vibrating with a silent, predatory rage. He wore grenade gauntlets that looked capable of leveling a building. This is bad, Izuku muttered. We can do this, Deku-kun. Uraraka pumped a fist. We just have to capture the weapon, right? Kaken won't care about the weapon, Izuku said, tightening his gloves. He's coming for me. He thinks I tricked him for 10 years. He thinks my quirk is a lie. The halls were dark and narrow. Concrete walls hemmed them in. Uraraka-san, Izuku whispered. Go to the 5th floor. Find the weapon. I'll distract him. But, he won't let you pass if I'm with you. I'm the target. Okay. Be careful. She ran off, her footsteps light. Izuku stood in the hallway. He closed his eyes. He felt the building. He felt the vibrations of the plumbing, the settling of the concrete, and the footsteps. Heavy. Angry. Come out, Deku. Bakugo turned the corner. He looked monstrous in the dim light, his gauntlets clicking ominously. You think you're better than me now? Bakugo asked, his voice echoing. You think because you can do some magic trick, you can stand in my ring? I'm not trying to beat you, Kaken, Izuku said, assuming a fighting stance. I'm trying to be a hero. Hero? Bakugo launched himself forward. You're just a glitch. Boom. Bakugo fired a right hook, an explosion primed in his palm. Izuku didn't dodge. He didn't have the speed to dodge a point-blank blast. Stasis. The world went gray. Bakugo hung in the air, his face contorted in a scream, the explosion just a spark of orange light in his palm. Izuku stepped to the left. He moved 3 feet. Resume. Bakugo's fist hit empty air. The explosion detonated harmlessly against the wall, scorching the concrete. What? Bakugo spun around, using the momentum of the blast. He was fast. Terrifyingly fast. He swung his left leg for a kick. Stasis. Izuku ducked. Resume. The kick sailed over his head. Stop it! Bakugo roared, firing a flurry of explosions. Stop glitching around. Fight me! Izuku was panting. Every stasis was a micro-cardiac arrest. His chest hurt. His monitor was flashing yellow. I can't keep dodging. He has too much stamina. I need to disable him. Bakugo lunged again. This time, he feinted. Izuku froze time to dodge the right, but when time resumed, Bakugo was already spinning for a backhand. He had predicted the dodge. Gotcha! The gauntlet connected with Izuku's shoulder. Bang! Izuku was sent flying. He slammed into a pillar, gasping for air. His shoulder burned. The fabric of his costume was seared. You have a tell, Bakugo sneered, smoke rising from his hands. Right before you disappear, your eyes widen. And you always dodge to the path of least resistance. Bakugo raised his gauntlet. He pulled the pin on the storage mechanism. All Might said not to use this indoors, Bakugo grinned maniacally. But if you can stop time, you can dodge it, right? Kaken, don't! Izuku screamed. That's lethal. Not if you don't get hit. Bakugo pulled the trigger. A torrent of fire unleashed. It consumed the hallway. It was a wall of annihilation moving at the speed of an explosion. There was no dodging this. It filled the corridor. Izuku looked at the oncoming fire. Entropy? No, I can't age energy. Stasis? If I stop time, the fire is still there when I unfreeze. I have to send it back. It was a theory. Dr. Ijiko said it was theoretically possible, but the metabolic cost would be astronomical. Rewind. Izuku held out both hands. He didn't try to stop the fire. He grabbed the timeline of the space in front of him, a cube of reality roughly 10 feet wide, and he pulled it backward. He screamed. It felt like his brain was being split in half with a wedge. Blood erupted from his nose, splattering the inside of his mask. The fire hit the invisible barrier of his will, and then, it retreated. To Bakugo's horror, the explosion went back into the gauntlet. The smoke coalesced into fire, the fire compressed into a spark, and the spark vanished into the storage tank. The recoil of the timeline snapping back hit Izuku like a truck. He vomited blood, falling to his knees. His monitor shrieked. Alert! Alert! Arrhythmia. Bakugo stood there, his arm trembling. The gauntlet was cold. What did you do? Bakugo whispered. That didn't happen, I said. Izuku wheezed, standing up on trembling legs. His vision was swimming. I'm not a punching bag anymore. Hero team wins. All Might's voice boomed over the speakers. Ha! Bakugo looked up. What? The weapon has been secured. Bakugo turned. While he had been focused on the explosion that never happened, Uraraka had used the distraction, the massive shaking of the building, to float herself over Ida and hug the bomb. Izuku smiled. Blood stained his teeth. I bought time, he rasped. Then his eyes rolled back. The gray world came for him, unbidden. The infirmary. The beeping was familiar. Izuku woke up to the feeling of a gummy kiss on his forehead. You foolish child. Recovery girl bonked him on the head with her cane. Ow. Izuku rubbed his head. Recovery girl? You aged your liver by 4 years. She scolded, pointing at a chart. And your heart muscle shows signs of extreme strain. What were you thinking, reversing a blast of that magnitude? I had to protect the building, Izuku murmured. And myself. You need to be careful, she sighed, handing him a gummy. Your body heals, but time leaves marks. You have more gray hairs. Izuku looked in the mirror. The white streak had thickened. There were now faint strands of silver near his temples. He looked like a teenager with the eyes of a veteran. The door opened. All Might squeezed in, looking small in his deflated form. Young Midoriya, he said softly. That was reckless. But brilliant. Did I win? You won the match, All Might said. But young Bakugo, he took it hard. He watched his greatest attack simply cease to exist. It shattered his worldview. He'll bounce back, Izuku said, looking at his hands. He's strong. Stronger than me. Strength isn't just firepower, All Might said. You controlled the flow of the battle. You dictated the reality of the fight. That is the power of a pro. All Might paused. But Aizawa is watching you. He saw the rewind. He knows you're dangerous. I know, Izuku said. He clenched his fist. But I can control it. I just need practice. Speaking of practice, All Might said, his face turning grim. There was a break-in today. The media gate was destroyed. Villains? We don't know. But whoever did it, they turned the barrier to dust. Izuku froze. Dust. Decay. Like me? Similar, All Might said. But different. Yours is clean. Rust. Age. This was destruction. Be careful, Izuku. The clock is ticking towards something, and I fear you might be at the center of it. Izuku looked out the window. The sun was setting, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple. Shigaraki Tamura, Izuku thought, though he didn't know the name yet. He felt a strange resonance in his chest. A pull. Somewhere out there, someone else was touching the world and watching it fall apart. Izuku checked his watch. Tick. 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 I'll be ready, he whispered. The bus ride to the unforeseen simulation joint was a study in contrasts. On one side of the aisle, Ashido Mina and Kaminari Denki were debating the merits of various fast food chains with the intensity of a congressional hearing. On the other, Tokoyami Fumikage stared into the middle distance, radiating brooding silence. Izuku Midoriya sat near the back, his wrist monitor resting on his knee. 62 BPM. Resting rate optimal. He watched the scenery blur past the window. Trees, fences, power lines, they all whipped by in a smear of color. To anyone else, it was just motion. To Izuku, it was a constant reminder of the flow he could interrupt but never truly control. Midoriya-chan, a croaking voice broke his concentration. Izuku jumped slightly, his heart rate spiking to 75 before settling. He turned to see Tsuyu Ajiri blinking her large, observant eyes at him. Oh. Ajiri-san. Did you need something? Call me Tsuyu, she said bluntly. I speak my mind. Your quirk, it's like a clock, isn't it? During the fitness test, you didn't just move fast. You moved weirdly. Like a video skipping frames. The bus went quiet. Even Bakugo, sitting 3 rows ahead with his headphones on, seemed to tilt his head slightly, listening. Izuku rubbed the white streak in his hair, a nervous habit he couldn't shake. It's complicated. It's called Chronos. I can manipulate the flow of time relative to myself or objects I touch. That sounds incredibly powerful, Kirishima Aijiro chimed in, leaning over his seat. Like, final boss powerful. My hardening is strong, but it's boring compared to time control. It's not as cool as it sounds, Izuku murmured, looking at his gloved hands. Stopping time, it stops everything. Air becomes solid. Light stops moving, so everything is gray. And my heart, he tapped the monitor. My heart stops too. Every time I use it, I'm technically dead for a few seconds. A heavy silence fell over the immediate area. That is, extremely metal, Kaminari whispered, looking horrified. It's a trade-off, Izuku said, forcing a smile. I trade my time for the world's time. It's fair. It doesn't sound fair at all, Tsuyu said, placing a finger on her chin. It sounds lonely. Izuku looked back out the window. The gray road stretched on. Yeah. Sometimes it is. The Dome of Catastrophe. The USJ was a marvel of engineering. A massive dome housing shipwrecks, landslides, fires, and storms, all designed to teach young heroes how to save lives when the world fell apart. 13, the space hero, stood before them in her puffy astronaut suit. Her voice was gentle, echoing in the vast space. Before we begin, just one thing, or 2, or 3. She held up 3 fingers. My quirk is black hole. I can suck up anything and turn it into dust. Izuku's eyes widened. Dust. But it is also a power that can kill easily, 13 continued. Some of you have quirks like that. Quirks that can destroy, alter, or end lives in an instant. In this society, quirks are regulated, so we forget how dangerous they truly are. This class is to teach you how to use your power to save, not to harm. Izuku clenched his fist. To save. Even if I turn to dust myself. Great speech, Aizawa said dryly, stepping forward. Now let's. The lights flickered. It wasn't a simple power outage. The hum of the massive overhead floodlights died with a groan of dying machinery. The fountain in the center of the plaza stuttered, the water pressure failing. Sensei? Kirishima asked. Is this part of the scenario? Aizawa didn't answer. He spun around, his scarf rising like a hackled cat. His eyes narrowed behind his goggles, fixed on the central plaza down below. Stay back! Aizawa roared, his voice carrying a terrifying urgency. This isn't a drill. In front of the fountain, space tore open. It didn't look like a door opening. It looked like a purple bruise appearing on reality, swirling and expanding. From within the void, a hand reached out. Pale, thin, and covered in what looked like dead skin, a face followed. A man with messy, pale blue hair, his face obscured by a severed, embalmed hand clutching his face. Behind him, a massive, bird-beaked monstrosity lumbered out, its brain exposed. and then the army. Dozens, then scores of villains poured out of the mist. Eraserhead and 13, the pale man rasped. His voice carried, dry and scratchy, like sandpaper on bone. The teacher's schedule we received said All Might was supposed to be here. The trespassing the other day, Aizawa muttered. It was the press, but they used it as cover. Where is he? The man scratched his neck violently. I went through so much trouble to bring this crowd. All Might, the symbol of peace. I want to see him draw his last breath. Izuku felt the air pressure drop. It wasn't his quirk. It was the sheer malice radiating from the man below. Villains? Mineta squeaked. No way. There's no way they could get into a hero's school. 13. Aizawa ordered. Protect the students. Kaminari, try to contact the school with your quirk. I'm trying, but I'm getting jammed. Kaminari yelled, tapping his headset. I'm going down, Aizawa said, adjusting his goggles. Sensei, you can't? Izuku shouted. There are too many of them. Your quirk is best for one-on-one stealth captures. Fighting a group in daylight. It's illogical. Aizawa glanced back. For a second, his eyes met Izuku's. You can't be a hero with only one trick, Midoriya. With that, the underground hero leaped. He fell toward the plaza, his capture weapon lashing out, grabbing 3 villains before he even hit the ground. It was a masterclass in fluid combat. We have to move! Ida yelled. To the exit. The class turned and ran toward the massive doors. But they were 50 meters away. I'm afraid I can't let you do that. A wall of purple mist erupted from the ground in front of them. 2 glowing yellow eyes narrowed within the smoke. We are the League of Villains, the mist spoke, its voice refined and polite. We have invited ourselves into the home of heroes, Yui High School, in order to have All Might take his last breath. Not on my watch! Bakugo roared. Beside him, Kirishima hardened his arms. Both boys launched themselves at the mist. Bet you didn't account for this. Bakugo screamed, unleashing a massive explosion directly into the mist's body. Boom! Smoke cleared. The mist was unharmed. That was dangerous, the mist said. That is true. Even students are golden eggs. The mist expanded, swirling into a tornado. Begone! Hold on! Izuku yelled, reaching for Uraraka and Ida, but the floor disappeared. The world spun. The shipwreck zone. Cold. Wet. Dark. Izuku hit the water with a splash that knocked the wind out of him. He thrashed, the heavy weight of his costume dragging him down. Salt water filled his nose. Panic. No. Don't panic. Analyze. He opened his eyes underwater. It was murky, but he saw shadows moving below him. Shapes. Shark-like villains swimming upward. They're coming. Izuku kicked toward the surface. He broke the water, gasping. Midoriya-chan. A long tongue wrapped around his waist. Tsuyu stood on the deck of a sinking ship nearby, Mineta clinging to her back. She yanked Izuku out of the water just as a set of jaws snapped shut where his legs had been. He landed on the rusted metal deck, coughing up water. Thanks, Ajiri-san. I mean, Tsuyu, Izuku wheezed. This is bad, this is bad, this is bad. Mineta wailed, throwing purple balls into the water aimlessly. We're gonna die. Those are actual villains. Izuku looked over the railing. The ship was surrounded. Dozens of villains trod water, circling like piranhas. They aren't attacking all at once, Izuku noted, his mind shifting into analysis mode despite the fear. They're waiting. They don't know our quirks. They know we're students, Tsuyu said. They probably think we'll panic. Mineta is proving them right, Izuku muttered. He looked at his gauntlets. They were waterproof, but his quirk. If I use stasis here, I freeze. If I freeze, I can't interact with the water effectively. I need entropy. But water is stable. You can't rust water, Mineta, Izuku said. Your balls. Do they float? They stick to anything but me. And yeah, they float, Tsuyu. How strong is your kick? Pretty strong. I have a plan, Izuku said, looking at the massive propeller shaft housing on the deck of the ship. It was old, painted steel. But I need a second. Keep them off the hull. What are you going to do? I'm going to create a whirlpool. Izuku ran to the center of the deck. He knelt by the main structural pillar of the ship, If I rot the keel, the ship snaps in half. If it snaps, it sinks fast. The displacement of water. Hey! They're climbing! Mineta screamed. A villain with squid arms vaulted over the railing. Found you kiddies! Izuku didn't look up. Tsuyu didn't hesitate. She slapped Mineta, grabbed a handful of his sticky spheres, and threw them at the villain's face. Then she drop-kicked him back into the water. Hurry, Midoriya! Izuku placed both hands on the deck. Chronos, acceleration. Target, structural integrity. He didn't just age the metal. He visualized the stress fractures. He pushed time into the rivets holding the ship together. The metal groaned. It was a sound like a dying whale. Rust bloomed outward from his hands in a web of orange corrosion. The steel turned brittle, flaking away. Get ready to jump! Izuku yelled. Crack! The ship split. The structural integrity failed catastrophically. The front half of the ship, where they were standing, sheared off from the back half. The massive displacement of tons of metal sliding into the water created a vacuum. Now! Mineta, throw everything into the water. Tsuyu, grab us and jump! Mineta screamed and threw a barrage of sticky balls into the water. The villains, caught in the sudden suction of the sinking ship, were dragged toward the center. They collided with each other and the sticky spheres. Ribbit! Tsuyu grabbed both boys and launched herself into the air, clearing the danger zone. Below them, the shipwreck zone became a chaotic vortex. The sinking ship dragged the water down, and the villains were pulled into a sticky, thrashing ball of limbs and quirks. They landed in the shallow water near the shore. We did it, Mineta sobbed. Don't relax, Izuku said, standing up. He felt the drain. A week. He had probably lost a week of his life on that ship. His hair felt brittle. We need to get to Aizawa-sensei. The plaza. They crept along the edge of the central fountain, hiding behind a decorative wall. What they saw froze the blood in their veins. Aizawa was fighting. But he was losing. The man with the hands, Shigaraki, was standing over him. Aizawa's elbow was disintegrated, the flesh turned to dust. The capture weapon was shredded, and the monster, the gnome. It held Aizawa's head against the concrete. The teacher's arm was bent at a sickening angle. You're so cool, Eraserhead, Shigaraki said, his voice sounding bored. But you can't erase pure strength. This is the anti-symbol of peace, the bioengineered gnome. Let him go! Izuku whispered, his hand gripping the stone wall until it cracked. No, Midoriya, Tsuyu whispered back, her voice trembling. We can't fight that. Suddenly, the black mist materialized next to Shigaraki. Shigaraki Tamura, the mist said. One of the students escaped. Ida Tenya. He is running for help. Shigaraki scratched his neck furiously. Kurojiri, you let one go? If the pros come, it's game over. Ah, game over. He stopped scratching. He turned slowly toward the water zone. Toward where Izuku, Tsuyu, and Mineta were hiding. Well, if it's game over, we might as well shatter a few of the symbol's toys before we leave. Shigaraki moved. He was fast. Not speedster fast, but terrifyingly sudden. In a blink, he was in front of them. Smash, Shigaraki whispered. He reached out. His hand, all 5 fingers extended, descended toward Tsuyu's face. Tsuyu couldn't move. The fear paralyzed her. Mineta was frozen in terror. Izuku saw the hand. He saw the decaying flesh of Aizawa's elbow. He knew what that touch meant. Death. Instant, crumbling death. I can't let him touch her. Izuku didn't think about his heart. He didn't think about the monitor. Stop. The gray world. The sound of the waterfall vanished. The ominous hum of the gnome vanished. Silence. Absolute, heavy silence. The world lost its color. Shigaraki's hand hung inches from Tsuyu's face, frozen in a monochromatic nightmare. Dust motes hung suspended in the air. Izuku stood up. Pain erupted in his chest. It was sharper than usual. The adrenaline was high, which meant his heart had been beating fast when he stopped it. The sudden arrest was a shock to his system. Move. He forced his legs to work against the viscous air. He stepped over the low wall. He looked at Shigaraki. The villain's red eye was visible between the fingers of the hand mask. It was wide, maniacal. Fixed on Tsuyu. Izuku reached Tsuyu. He grabbed her costume. She's heavy. In the frozen world, inertia was weird. He had to apply force to get her moving, and once she was moving, she wouldn't stop unless he applied counterforce. He dragged her backward, away from the hand. He looked at Mineta. The great boy was cowering. Izuku grabbed him by the collar and yanked him back too. His chest screamed. 3 seconds. He looked at Shigaraki. He wanted to hit him. He wanted to punch that face. If I hit him now, the kinetic energy will accumulate. When time starts, it'll be like getting hit by a truck. But, Izuku looked at his own hand. It was trembling. If he punched Shigaraki, the equal and opposite reaction might shatter Izuku's own arm in this dense atmosphere. And he needed his arms. Just save them. That's enough. He dragged them 5 meters back. He positioned himself between the villains and his friends. 5 seconds. His vision was darkening. The gray world was turning black at the edges. His brain was starving for oxygen. Release. Snap. Sound crashed back in. Shigaraki's hand closed. Clack. His fingers touched nothing but air. Huh! Shigaraki paused. He looked at his empty hand. He looked forward. Tsuyu was gone. What? He turned his head. 5 meters away, Izuku stood, arms spread protectively over Tsuyu and Mineta. Izuku was gasping, clutching his chest, his face a mask of agony. Tsuyu blinked. One moment death was in her face. The next, she was behind Midoriya. Midoriya-chan? Shigaraki lowered his hand. He tilted his head. You! Shigaraki's voice dropped an octave. You didn't use speed. There was no wind. No blur. He scratched his neck. You cut the film. You edited the video. Shigaraki turned fully toward Izuku. Noma. Killed the timekeeper. The bird monster released Aizawa. It stood up, towering over them. It was 7 feet of muscle and scars. Run, Izuku rasped, shoving Tsuyu back. Get Aizawa-sensei and run. The Noma moved. It was faster than eyes could track. Izuku didn't try to stop time. He knew he couldn't move that mass. Defensive temporal dilation. He threw his hands up. He created a bubble of slowed time directly in front of his body. A shield where 1 second inside was 10 seconds outside. The Noma's fist entered the bubble. Visually, it looked like the punch hit an invisible wall of syrup. The fist slowed down drastically inches from Izuku's face. But momentum is conserved. The force of the punch didn't disappear. It just spread out over time. The air pressure compressed against Izuku's dilation field. Boom! Izuku was launched backward as if he'd been hit by a cannonball. The air shield absorbed the piercing impact, saving his skull from being crushed, but the kinetic energy threw him 30 feet. He slammed into the stairs leading to the exit. Gah! Blood sprayed from his mouth. His left arm, the one he'd used to project the shield, was twisted. Not broken, but sprained badly by the recoil. Midoriya! Tsuyu screamed. The Noma stood there, confused for a microsecond. It looked at its fist. It works on impact too? Shigaraki mused. Cheating. That's cheating. Nomu, crush him properly. The Nomu charged again. Izuku tried to stand. His legs wobbled. His heart monitor was screaming a high-pitched continuous tone. I can't do it again. The Nomu raised both fists for a hammer smash. Boom! The entrance doors burst open. Smoke filled the entryway. A figure stood there, not wearing a smile. He wasn't wearing a suit jacket. He was wearing a white dress shirt, his tie loose, his expression one of unadulterated fury. I am here. All Might's voice wasn't a catchphrase. It was a declaration of war, because I had a bad feeling. In a blur of speed that didn't require time manipulation, All Might was in the plaza. He snatched Aizawa. He snatched Tsuyu and Mineta. He snatched Izuku. He deposited them all near the entrance in less than a second. All Might. Izuku whispered, tears mixing with the blood on his face. You're out of time. He saw it. Steam was already rising from All Might's skin. The hero was pushing himself. He had wasted his 3 hours doing hero work on the commute. He was running on fumes. Don't worry, young Midoriya, All Might said, facing the villains. But he didn't look back. He couldn't. If he did, Izuku would see the fear in his eyes. I will handle this. The battle of attrition. It wasn't a fight. It was a collision of natural disasters. All Might clashed with the Nomu. The shockwaves shattered the windows of the dome. The water in the lake zone created tidal waves. Carolina. Smash! All Might chopped the Nomu's chest. No effect. Shock absorption. Shigaraki laughed maniacally. You can't punch him to death, All Might. He's designed to take 100% of your power and ask for more. All Might gritted his teeth. He threw a flurry of punches. Left, right, uppercut. Effect nullified. Behind him, Izuku watched. He saw the steam getting thicker. He saw All Might's form flicker, the skeletal arm appearing for a split second before puffing back up. He's at his limit. He's going to revert. If All Might reverted here, in front of Shigaraki, the symbol of peace would die. The world would know he was weak. Chaos would swallow society. I can't let that happen. Izuku stood up. His left arm hung uselessly. His ribs ached. Midoriya? Where are you going? Mineta cried from behind a rock. Izuku walked down the stairs. The Nomu grapple-hugged All Might, digging its fingers into the hero's weak spot, the injury on his side. All Might roared in pain. You're getting slower, All Might. Shigaraki taunted. Where's that smile? All Might struggled. His strength was fading. The embers of One for All were flickering out. I have 1 minute, All Might thought despairingly. Maybe less. I can't win. A hand touched his back. It wasn't a villain. The hand was small. Trembling. Hot. Yum. Midoriya? All Might gasped, trying to shield the boy with his body. Get back! I can't fix you. Izuku's voice was a whisper, audible only to All Might amidst the chaos. Izuku pressed his palm flat against All Might's spine, right over the scar. I can't heal the injury. I can't give you One for All back. The Nomu squeezed tighter. Blood soaked All Might's shirt. But I can give you a loan. Izuku closed his eyes. He didn't visualize rust. He didn't visualize a stop button. He visualized a VCR rewinding. He visualized a clock spinning backward. Target, Tashinori Yagi's stamina. Duration 1 minute. Cost, transactional exchange. Rewind. Izuku screamed. It was a sound that tore his throat. His head snapped back. The white streak in his hair shot backward, consuming the green like a wildfire. It spread from his temple to the back of his skull in an instant. Energy, gold and blue, surged from Izuku into All Might. It wasn't healing. It was temporal displacement. Izuku was taking the physical state of All Might from 1 hour ago, and overlaying it onto the present. He was borrowing time, and the interest rate was high. Izuku collapsed, vomiting bile and blood. He fell face first onto the concrete. But All Might. The steam stopped. The muscles swelled. The slump in his posture vanished. The exhaustion was wiped away. For exactly 60 seconds, All Might was not the tired, dying man. He was the man who had punched the weather. Young Midoriya, All Might roared. The sound was different. It was deeper. It carried the weight of a prime hero. He broke the Nomu's grip by simply flexing his lats. The creature's fingers snapped. What? Shigaraki stepped back. He got faster? All Might didn't speak. He grabbed the Nomu by the face. You said you have shock absorption? All Might slammed the Nomu into the ground. The concrete floor of the USJ shattered, creating a crater 10 meters wide. Then I just have to punch you until it stops working. He began to punch. It wasn't a flurry. It was a bombardment. Each punch broke the sound barrier. Boom. 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 It's too fast. Shigaraki scratched his face until it bled. He was weakening. I saw it. Why is he stronger? All Might wasn't just stronger. He was overflowing with borrowed power. He felt Izuku's sacrifice burning in his veins. He felt the boy's life force powering his swings. I will not waste a single second of this gift. Plus. Ultra. All Might delivered a final uppercut. The Nomu was launched. It hit the ceiling of the dome. It smashed through the reinforced glass. It broke the sound barrier again as it exited the atmosphere, twinkling like a star in the daylight sky. Silence returned to the USJ. All Might stood in the crater. Steam began to pour off him in torrents. The minute was up. He turned. He looked at the small, crumpled form on the ground behind him. Izuku was unconscious. His hair was now 50% white, a stark skunk stripe running through the green. He looked small. Broken. But he was breathing. You cheated, Shigaraki whispered. He was shaking. You cheated. He ran at All Might. I'll kill you! Even if the Nomu is gone, you're weak now. Bang! A bullet struck Shigaraki in the hand. Then another in the leg. Sorry we're late, a voice called from the entrance. Snipe, Nizu, and the rest of the faculty stood at the top of the stairs. Game over, Shigaraki hissed. Kurogiri wrapped around him. We leave. But this isn't the end. As the mist swallowed him, Shigaraki didn't look at All Might. He looked past the hero. He looked at the boy on the ground. The keeper, Shigaraki murmured. Next time. I break the clock. They vanished. The fallout. The police arrived. The students were gathered outside. Izuku was being loaded onto a stretcher. An oxygen mask was over his face. Midoriya! Uraraka cried, trying to get close. Is he okay? Back, students, Samantha said gently, creating a wall. Let the medics work. Kirishima watched them load Izuku. He saw the hair. He looks older, Kirishima whispered. Inside the ambulance, All Might sat in his skeletal form. He held Izuku's hand. You foolish boy, All Might wept, his tears falling on the boy's gloved hand. You gave me your time. You shouldn't have. Izuku's eyes fluttered open. They were hazy, unfocused. All Might? I'm here, my boy. I'm here. Did we fix it? All Might squeezed his hand. Yes. You fixed it. Everyone is safe. Izuku smiled weakly. Good. That's logical. He closed his eyes. The monitor beeped steadily. Beep, beep, beep. Outside, the sun was setting. The clock of the world kept ticking, indifferent to the boy who had paid a heavy price to keep the hands moving.